Welcome to the Building One Story at a Time podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Katie Herbine.
And I'm Stephanie LaChance.
Today, we're joined again by Mike Hockenberry, Director of Residential Construction and Customer Service.
Nailed it.
Yeah!
Mike, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we had an episode previously about the mechanical orientation. So we're kind of doing a brief series of just about different steps you have along your new home build experience. If you have not listened to that episode yet, we will drop a link to that in the show notes so you can go back and take a listen. And today we want to talk about the final in-person appointment before you get the keys for your new house at settlement. And that would be the new homeowner orientation. So this walkthrough happens about a week prior to settlement. Almost every settlement's going to be held on a Friday, so you can have the weekend to move in. So this orientation is usually the Friday before or maybe the Tuesday before settlement.
Yeah, so let's talk about what happened since the mechanical orientation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked about maybe a month after we start, we have the mechanical orientation. And now roughly 2 months after that meeting, we're going to be completing the home and having the homeowner orientation. So we would have gone from framing and mechanical rough-ins all the way through drywall, paint, trim, kitchen, flooring, finishes. And now here we are 2 months later, and your home's going to be completed. And that's the point to where then we're going to be doing that homeowner orientation. So
awesome. So this is the meeting.
Yeah, and I'm sure you haven't been in your house since.
Right, it's the big reveal. We have a truck. We move it.
Yeah, so it is exciting, right? It's going to be clean. We have gone through. We have done some of our inspections that we do, which we have quite a few towards the end. Our site managers who we talked about at the mechanical orientation, again, they carry that home all the way through completion. So they would have been in there confirming that options are done correctly, confirming that the finishes are correct, maybe creating any punch list items and sending it out to our trade partners. So all that takes place prior to the mechanical orientation. So really, the idea behind the mechanical orientation is we are there in your home and we're trying to explain all the features that are installed in your home, how they work, maintenance requirements, that kind of thing. Now, we will be able to create a list if there's any items that come up, that we see as needed corrected prior to settlement. We do have that capability to note those items on an orientation list, and we will, make every effort to get those done prior to settlement. But the real point behind the homeowner orientation is really just to go through your home and kind of explain all the features.
Tell us a little bit about some of the stops that you make in the kitchen as far as some of the items you talk about for example, like garbage disposal, do a brief chat about appliances, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the appliances and kind of review switch locations, and we'll talk about GFCIs in the kitchen backsplash. And appliances, those are actually really easy at the mechanical orientation because now they all come with a QR code inside the door that you can just scan and get like the homeowner manual. So cool. We really don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the functionality of the dishwasher, but we do explain how it works and how it's connected to the garbage disposal. And, we'll talk about, if you jam the garbage disposal, how can you try to clear that jam yourself without calling a plumber? I learned this many, many years ago when I first started as a site manager, and a plumber told me, you only put down a garbage disposal, anything that you would eat. So, eggshells, right? You don't want to put eggshells down there, pumpkin seeds, like all that stuff. So it's a great way to think about it. If you wouldn't eat it, don't put it down the garbage disposal.
I had a friend put flower stems down there and they had to get a new garbage disposal.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah, so common maintenance item, anything that goes down the garbage disposal that you're not supposed to eat.
Okay.
Other than that, in the kitchen, we'll talk about all of your cabinets are going to come with touch-up kits, right? So if you scratch or dent a cabinet, we'll show you. Usually, there's a crayon and a marker in there, depending on if it's a painted cabinet or a stained cabinet. So we'll talk about that. We usually have all the manuals for all the other appliances and anything else in your home in the kitchen drawer. So we'll show you those. Maybe we'll talk about the operation of some of those things at that point.
Awesome. Cool. Anything else about like the top 2 floors you want to mention? Because I know there's a lot of meaty stuff in the basement that we touch on during that orientation.
Yeah. So I always like to start at the top and work my way down. So something that we always have to review again, which we talk about at the mechanical orientation, is the bath fans.
Mm.
So we have a continuous running bath fan and two bathrooms typically, owner's bathroom and the hall bathroom. So we always review that. It's a lot easier to understand at the final orientation because it's actually functioning.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about the override switch, and then we talk about the switch that ramps the fan up to full speed. And again, I'll explain why that's necessary, because we have to build houses to a certain tightness based off of the code. We have to have them at least, certain air changes per hour. And if we do that, which we're required to do, then we have to introduce makeup air, which is the purpose behind the continuous running bath fans. So that's always a stop that we have to talk about and make sure that the homeowners are comfortable with how that works. We'll look at switches in the bedrooms, talk about how half of the receptacle is switched and half of it's hot all the time. So if you have a floor lamp or a table lamp, you plug it into the switched outlet. TVs, alarm clocks, anything else, you plug into the hot outlet. We may talk about HVAC returns and supplies, how they look different, how the supplies will have a damper on that you can control airflow at the floor register, and how returns, we want to make sure we don't put furniture in front of them to block them off, because the system requires a certain amount of return air to function properly.
Awesome.
I'm learning so much.
Have you ever attended
I have, but I think I need to go to another one.
Yeah, you'll have to get back to mechanic orientation. So Rick Hufford, who's our construction manager, he does most of our homeowner orientations. He's done them for years. He's really good at it. So
yeah, he's been with EG 46 years,
46
you said last
years,
episode?
yeah,
okay.
years.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, I just think construction's fun. So I just think all those meetings are fun. But the home orientation, it's usually a good time, right? We try to make it a good time. Mm-hmm. So I will say that, one way to prepare for the homeowner orientation is try to come alone. It's it really is a lot of information at one time. So Rick or myself or Mike Morrow, our customer service manager, who typically will do, one of us three will do that orientation. We try to do a good job explaining what we need to explain and doing it in such a way that you don't have to remember too much information. Mm-hmm. But it really is a learning experience. So
it is, yeah. That's good advice, Mike, because I have to admit, my experience being new home sales specialist, I know it's exciting, especially to maybe have your agent there or your friend, etc. But I have experienced many slowed down orientations because there's chatting about vacations or things that are not related. When it's good information, you don't want to miss it. And we don't want the wife distracted or the husband distracted while this information is being shared, because you want to get the most out of this experience, because it only happens once.
And there will be another time to bring your friends and family through the house, like once you move in or get the keys a week later at settlement.
And you can have snacks then too.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point. And sure, we can talk about, vacations and stuff like that. Again, we want to make it a fun experience, but really the purpose is to try to, learn how your home works and maintenance items and stuff like that. So as far as the top floor, I think those are probably the main things. And then again, I talked about there may be something that you see that you question, is that something that needs corrected? And if those things come up, we'll talk about those. And sometimes, it's just an explanation that's done this way and here's why. And certain times there is things that, maybe slip through a quality inspection, or we agree we could make that better. And those are the kind of things that go on the orientation list, which usually the new home sales specialist will be there and they'll keep a list if there's any of those items that come up.
A lot of stuff I feel like our team already knows about. I'll always use an example. Sometimes if your microwave arrives and it's dented, we may install that dented microwave just so you'll have one for settlement. We're not going to delay settlement to wait for a replacement appliance to come in, and we might come in shortly after settlement and replace that for you once it's arrived.
Yeah. We try really hard to get those items done prior to settlement. That's probably a good example of something we can't control if we have to order a part. But anything else, we try to really hard to get done prior to settlement. Again, we have several quality inspections that we do prior to homeowner orientation and your house being completed. So some customers and new homeowners, they want to go through and open every window and make sure they work properly. And that's fine. We don't have a problem with that. But, we do that at least once or twice during the course of our inspection. So that's something why, if there is an issue that it's not caught at the mechanical or the homeowner orientation, we'll certainly come out and take care of any, actual warranty issues after settlement. But we do try really hard to get all those items corrected before you move in.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about what happened, like the stops in the basement next? I also have another thing I want to talk about, which is what we don't address at the mechanical orientation.
Sure. We can talk about the basement first?
Sure.
Yeah. So typically when we go down to the basement, that is really all the mechanical equipment. So good news is you have a new home, you have new equipment. There's not a ton of maintenance, but there is some things to know. I mean, we'll go over and we'll look at the electrical panel. We'll talk about the breakers. There's different breakers in there. There's going to be arc fault breakers. There's going to be GFCI breakers. We'll talk about what it looks like when they're tripped, how to reset them and turn them back on. We'll look at your furnace and your air handler. We'll talk about somewhat of the basic function of that. And really the only maintenance thing on that would be replacing the air filter. So we'll show you how to do that. We'll show you which way the air needs to go. The air return comes in, there's an arrow there. So we'll show you how the filter needs to be installed to function properly. And then we'll just kind of talk about how it's important to do regular service on that equipment. I'll give a shout out to our HVAC contractor because we use them on every house. It's Resser Mateer. We've worked with them for over 50 years. They're really, really good contractor. So they have a sticker on the furnace. They have 24-hour emergency service. So if it's 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday and you lose heating, you can contact them directly and get that taken care of. So we'll talk about like those emergency contact numbers. There's also going to be one over on the water heater for the plumber. So again, a plumbing emergency, you can contact them directly any hour of the day. Water heaters, not a lot of maintenance on those. We'll set the temperature in the water heater per code. And, it has to be between 110 and 120 degrees at the shower or the bath fixture. And that's how we set the hot water heater. Once it's set, very little maintenance on a new water heater. But we will talk about, how that works and show you any important things that you need to know about that.
Awesome. Well, let's chat a little bit about what we don't cover at the new home orientation, or what we don't address rather, because we do it later for you.
Yeah, so you must be referring to the paint voucher?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with giving some background on why we started doing a paint voucher, which when we say paint voucher, we'll have our painter come back for 90 minutes, up to 90 minutes within 30 days after you move in. So that will allow you to have them touch up anything that maybe we missed during our initial quality checks. And if you scuff a wall while you're moving, minor paint damage, we'll also touch that up while we're there. We found over the years that different times of day, you'll see different like blemishes in the paint. So we're only in the home usually from, let's say 7 to 4 in daylight. But maybe at nighttime, when you turn on a certain light, you're going to see a paint defect or blemish that we wouldn't have seen just because the lighting's different. So we started this program, I'm going to say probably 10 years ago, to allow the customer to take advantage of this paint voucher and contact our customer service department. We'll set up a time for the painter to come out, and they can do quite a bit of paint touch up in 90 minutes, and it really seems to work better for everybody. We're not going to be talking about paint then at the homeowner orientation because you have that paint voucher that you can utilize. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. And again, it just allows us that time that we're at the house together for the homeowner orientation to focus on really just the features in your home.
I have a question about that paint voucher. So during the homeowner orientation, would they see like blue tape on the walls where you've gone through and noticed that the painter needs to touch up things, and that would be something that would be covered in the paint voucher, like leave that blue tape on the wall until you've moved in, or that blue tape's going to be addressed before the paint voucher?
Yeah, so if we would do that prior to the homeowner orientation, and we would have that stuff touched up. That is a great tip though, Katie. Like that's what we'll tell homeowners at the orientation. If you see something during that course of 30 days, like just make a list or put a sticky note or piece of blue painter's tape up there so you don't forget about it. That is really helpful to expedite the process when the painter comes.
You don't want to be walking around at that 90-minute time being like, yeah, have it right here, sir.
Yeah. Great point, Katie, actually. Yeah, if you can have, be prepared for the painter to come, and then, make sure you point out all the areas you want them to touch up. So it won't be the painter's going to go around the whole house and look for areas. You're going to have to point them out to them. So, great question. Is there times where we see a paint issue during orientation and we say like, hey, that's a great example of something that you can use the paint voucher for. And if it's not egregious and something you can't live with for 30 days, then we usually try to push it in that direction.
Speaking of paint, we will leave extra paint in the basement for you. So if you do need to do any touch-ups even after those 30 days, somebody colors on the wall, you drop something on the wall, you have that paint in the basement to do touch-ups. You can also get more of the EG Smooth White paint from any local PPG store. They know our code and they can always mix you up a batch if you need more.
Good point about stuff that gets left in the basement after the job is done. Mike, is that something that gets talked about at the homeowner orientation? Like, hey, here's the extra floor that's on the first floor, and here's another little bit of the sheet vinyl that you have in your bathrooms, etc. Is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. We do talk about that. So we call that backstock.
Okay.
A lot of times it's in the basement, under the basement stairs. So Stephanie mentioned paint, but we'll also have extra flooring, caulk for your tile, grout for your tile, shingles, siding, anything really that's extra that we open a pack of and not going to utilize in the initial install. We try to put some of it down there. That way, if you damage it, you have the same color, the same dye lot, so you know that it's going to match. So yeah, we do leave some of that stuff down there. Occasionally, if there's extra kitchen scribe or toe kick, we'll even leave that down there. You just never know when you're going to need it in the future. So you can do with it what you want after you move in, but we like to keep it down there just in case you need it in the future.
Yeah, especially helpful for some of the design studio options we do, since there can be like variations from dye lot to dye lot, even with the same color selection. Like if you order something 2 years later, there might be just a small variation. So it's always great to have a couple extra pieces on hand.
Yeah, flooring seems to be the big one. It seems like, any manufactured flooring product or tile product, again, the color variation could just be, slightly different. So.
Anything else you want to mention, Mike, about the new home orientation?
We didn't talk about fireplaces either. I know you go through the whole fireplace show, song and dance.
Yeah. If you have a fireplace installed in your home, we'll show you how that works. We'll show you how to set the blower, flame control, how to clean the glass. So we'll give you a thorough demonstration on the fireplace.
If they buy a remote, do you give them a little tutorial on the fireplace remote too?
Yep, we do that as well.
Cool. That's a popular option.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one other thing we'll talk about at the homeowner orientation is kind of like, what's it look like after you settle? So like, who's your contact? What do you do if you need either a warranty item addressed or just have a question? So that's kind of like for us internally, that's the handoff from construction to customer service. So we'll give you a red folder. It has some information in there about our warranty process, some contact information. So we take some time to explain what's that look like. Probably a whole nother episode about after settlement customer service, but it's really just trying to familiarize you with what's that look like and how can you contact DG Stoltzfus after you settle if you need to. So all that information's in there.
Like a
Wonderful.
little packet.
Little folder, little red folder. Yeah.
Another
That-
red
with-
folder.
with-
Yeah, you get one
Yeah,
here,
or
you
you-
get one there.
Your paint voucher's in there. Yeah. So some warranty information. We'll also talk again about the importance of turning your utilities over after you settle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we actually have a little buyer utility agreement that we review either at the beginning or the end of the orientation.
Mhm.
So again, this, making sure that those utilities are on E.G. Stoltzfus' name. The day settlement occurs, they should be transferred over to the new homeowner's name. And if not, it really complicates issues with billing
Yeah.
and invoicing with
Yeah.
utility companies.
Yeah. Also, not fun when you forgot to switch the bill and now you're getting a few months backlog bill that's way higher than you thought.
Yeah, that's not how we want to contact customers.
No.
So, yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mike, for joining us today on the Building One Story at a Time podcast. We are looking for listener questions. So if you have a question about your new home orientation, about building an E.G. Stoltzfus home, or any question for Katie and I, we're going to leave a link in the show notes for you to leave us that question, and maybe we can talk about it on a future episode.
Yes. And thank you, Mike, for joining us, and happy move-in day to all of our new homeowners going through their homeowner orientation.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Bye.
See ya.